Hey, everybody. Welcome back for another week of Chops podcast. My name is Jack Hinkle.
My name is Steve Peterson. You're speaking like super fast. My name is Steve Peterson.
My name is Jack. Okay, hey, everybody. We got to give you a little congratulations because Steve is named the Director of Music at Concord Community Schools. Give it up for Steve
Thank you.
Peterson.
I didn't think we were going to talk about that, but thank you very much.
How can we not talk about it? Did I already put it on the Chop Social?
I know, but yeah, thank you very much. I'm very excited. I'm going to be the Director of Music. That's an administrative position, helping collaborate with staff and plan with staff K through 12, all music, all the time. And then also leads to being the Director of Bands, which helping lead the band program at the high school, specifically the marching band. And then, I'm still going to teach one of the jazz bands, and Jack's going to take up another jazz band.
I'm going to teach Jazz 2 and Jazz 3.
He's got Jazz 2 and Jazz 3 and an after-school jazz band, so he has 2, 3, 4.
3 jazz bands.
Woo!
Dang.
And I'll have Jazz 1 next year, and so more administrative responsibilities.
Yeah, Steve's going to be my boss.
Woo!
Start being nice.
Yeah, more building relationships with staff and students and getting the fine arts program to continue to cook along and think about new experiences and process and progress, and I think it's going to be great. It's going to be fun.
A good time.
Be fun. So yeah, we talked about that today in class. Just became official yesterday, so that's a very exciting time and a little nervous time, but it's just because some of it I don't know what I don't know. But also our current boss, Mr. Scott Spradling, who is retiring after many years in the classroom and many years as the Director of Music at Concord, did a outstanding job.
Mm-hmm.
He's still around, and he can be a mentor and offer advice.
Boom.
And collaborate. So I feel happy about that.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are. So it is now sometime in the middle of February. Somehow it happened. The sun started coming out.
Dude, that made such a difference on the way to work. I'm like, oh, wow, I can see.
I know. There's no frost.
For some of us, waking up a little. Well, you wake up earlier.
Okay, so last year, when my son Adam graduated from Purdue, we had like a joint family party, like some of Adam's friends and all their families, and we were at a pavilion, like a park kind of thing. And we kind of went around and had like words of advice.
Yes.
Right, for the graduates. There were 3 young men that were graduating, and so family there, we probably had about 30 people. And one of the dads said, "Son, when you get your job, don't live west of where you work." And I was like, I was sitting there, and my mind was going, north, south. And I was like, wait, I'm that guy.
I live west of where I work.
Because when you live west of your work, you're always driving to the east in the morning. So you're looking at the sun.
Oh, looky. Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So you're like squinting. And especially this time of year, like it's starting to come right into eye level. And then when you go home, you're driving west, so you're driving towards the sunset. You're always driving in the sun.
Yes, and you can't see a thing.
You're in the opposite.
I'm in the opposite. I just think it's dark all the time.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So, but the sun is out and it feels good. And so Jack and I are at a different stage in our school year with the jazz bands. Kind of a recap. In January, we went to Purdue University for a day trip with our 3 jazz bands. I had done a local jazz show at a local high school on a Friday night. And then last weekend, Jack took his jazz band to a neighboring university by the name of Bethel in Mishawaka and went to a jazz festival there. And that was an all-day thing on Saturday. And then I took Jazz 1 and 2, and we went up through Valparaiso University, went to Chicago, and went to Madison, Wisconsin, and went to a jazz festival up there in the Madison area and got back late Saturday night. So we thought maybe today's episode would be good to talk about travel and student travel, or traveling with students.
Yes. And I'm guessing for a lot of the teachers listening, you've probably all gone on a field trip at some point, definitely as a kid, maybe as a teacher. And even if you haven't gone as a teacher, it's like a totally different vibe to be around kids.
You've been to a zoo and seen those like 30 second graders running around with matching tie-dyes. You've seen that.
Yeah, they give them the matching tie-dyes, so they always know where those kids are. That's how it goes. But yeah, you have seen that. And for us, being around our kids when we're on a trip, whether that's marching band or jazz band or whatever, it's a different vibe than when you're in the classroom. you're still Mr. Peterson and Mr. Hinkle, but your time is not 50 minutes that has to be incredibly constructive. You're just sometimes you're just kind of hanging. So in this week, we can kind of talk about some things we do, kind of what it's like when we do our curricular stuff in the field trip, i.e. performing or attending a clinic. And then we can talk about kind of maybe our bonding or less structured time. The downtime of listening to groups and walking through a mall somewhere and eating food with the kids and all that stuff goes. So maybe we could go with you and give us a little bit about what it looks like for when you first of all just greet your kids in the morning when they
we met 9:00 in the morning, and
you guys met at 9?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not bad.
No, it's
good
not
for you.
No, it was not bad, and it was school day closed attire because we went to Valparaiso University, worked with a jazz professional there, and did some clinics, and so it's very excuse me. We also had a charter bus, so that's kind of fun.
Oh, you guys had the charter.
You kind of the kids come in. It's like bow, like at the bus going.
Yes, you load the bus. The kids are wearing the sunglasses. They're like, hey, not on a cheese wagon today.
Yeah. So I did bring the students together, put them in the band room. Load the instruments first, please. Put them under the bus, but hang on to your personal items and let's chat in the band room. So objectively, some things that I take care of, and you've done this too, is that I have a PowerPoint or the kids have a handout of these are musical items we have to take on the trip, right?
Yep,
and depending on where we're going to perform, you have an item of what musical instruments, and then also what personal items should be in their bag and on their person. Just making sure that we're organized, right?
Yep.
And then I said, do a mental checklist of your music and your mutes and your instruments and all that stuff. And so that's good because that's a bummer traveling across state lines and you are missing something. So it was good to do that. Excuse me. But then we went into, talked about why do we take a trip? I said, why not just hire somebody from Chicago to come into the jazz band room on Friday of President's Weekend and do our 2-hour clinic? Why not just do that? We could save money. We could save time. You could sleep in your own bed, hang out with your own friends on vacation, and why do that? And then several students raised their hand. And I was like, why? And they said, because you want to build the culture. You want to build the community. And I said, bing, bing, bing. So I think, when you're looking about it, you're thinking about a trip and you are going to point A, you're going to Purdue University and you're gone for 16 hours. Your time that you perform on stage is 20 minutes. If you're in marching band and you go across state lines and you go to Toledo, you go to some competition there, your marching band plays for a total of 10 minutes. So there better be more than 10 minutes in store for the kids, or that is a mega waste of time. So I'm very aware and very conscious of the time that we are not on stage, because I like our odds when we get on stage that we're going to have a good time. I like our odds, okay? But it is all those non-curricular times, the non-assessment times, the non-formal times, the informal times. What is that, Jack? It's greeting the kids in the hallway. Right? It's hanging out with the kids in the band room. It's like stealing their snacks. Like, what kind of snacks do you have? Going up and down the bus. Like, what snacks do you have?
Like from School of Rock.
Yeah, exactly. No, sharing of snacks. Sitting in the bus. Singing songs. Listening to them telling jokes.
Taking selfies and
taking selfies.
Places.
Tapping the kid on the left and going to the right. Right? Doing that kind of stuff all day long.
Yep.
Photobombing.
Yep.
And just going to Burger King and getting a Burger King crown. And
the kids love the Burger King
happened.
crowns.
It happened in Chesterton, Indiana for us this couple days ago. So it is most of it is about doing something together that builds the community. It's not having the common vision that you're in the jazz band and you're playing a Count Basie chart or you're playing a Duke Ellington chart. That is not enough. Now, if you're in the Count Basie Orchestra back when, and you were on the road every day for 20 years with those brothers and sisters, and you were playing that music, yeah, that music is fortifying, and that's what builds your culture because you're traveling playing that music. But for us, since we only played 1 or 2 times over 2 days, It better be more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very intentional, taking the kid, well, it's not out of school, but taking them overnight, staying in a hotel, being able to play euchre in the lobby, having breakfast together, having dinner together. We were like in Chicago, and we went to Millennium Park, right? Free. Most kids, have they been to Chicago? Sure. Is it fun being in Chicago with your teenage friends and you have free time? Absolutely. Does Starbucks taste any different in the city? No, but it's fun, right? We went to the Lincoln Park Zoo. Was it cold? Yeah. Was it free? Yeah. Did we see some orangutans and monkeys and zebras? Yeah. Was it silly? Yeah, it was a blast. Kids are like running around the zoo like little kids. It was a blast. So, I do pull that back and then also think about, like, if you have a family and you plan a trip and you are going for 5 days and you're going to go to the beach, maybe you're going to go to Fort Myers Beach, or maybe you're going to go to Disney World, maybe you really saved up. Bougie. And you go to like Epcot and Disney World and, Universal Studios, whatever. It better be more than just those 3 8-hour days that you spent at that park. It better be the road trip down there, whether it was in the car or a van or in an airport. It better be about the process getting there, the hotel stay, right? Locking your keys in your car. I don't know.
Yeah, but the destination is the journey.
Yeah,
right?
That's it.
That's the cliche, but it's cliche for a reason.
So I do think about that. Like, and I was glad that some students, and actually some of the younger students, were able to articulate that, saying, like, you want to help build the culture, or we want to build the culture of the community of the jazz band.
When you think back to your high school days, can you think of those moments that have like absolutely nothing to do?
Yep.
You can just conjure those up, right?
Yeah, I got those.
I think I do too. I can remember being on your jazz trip when I was a student, and we did a flash mob of our Christmas Spectacular choreography
on Michigan
in
Avenue.
Michigan Avenue, right by the Bean. Jelly, jelly, jelly. I can't unsee that. It's
jelly,
still there.
Jelly,
yeah.
jelly, jelly, jelly. Yeah, that. Yeah, exactly. Those, and I can remember those faces. I can remember that it was cold and we were drinking hot chocolate, and it was just like silliness.
Silliness. That's true. And that's how it is every time.
And we didn't really plan all that stuff.
No. It is interesting because sometimes kids ask me, I don't know if they ask you, they're like, do you get nervous for us to perform? I usually say no, like 9 out of 10.
Because the kids aren't listening now. Do you get
that's
nervous?
right. Kids stop it. No.
Hey, kids, if you're listening, shut it down a second. You get nervous?
I usually don't.
Okay, kids, back up. Okay,
Thank you. Do you?
No.
Yeah. That I usually tell the kids, like, the easiest part is once we're on stage. Like, if every human is there with instruments, music, etc., we're good. Like, we're going to roll.
It's getting everybody there.
It's getting everybody there, like when attendance time rolls around.
Yes.
Now, you had like your nice 9 a.m. attendance, and I think you guys left Friday?
Mm-hmm.
Friday was like a decent day.
Yeah, but then...
But I came around on Saturday, and we had the lovely opportunity to perform at 9:30 a.m., which meant we had attendance in the band room at 7:20. And Saturday morning, Steve, was pretty dicey with the weather because we got quite a bit of snow, and roads were not... Well, it was a weekend, right? So the roads were not getting paved that morning. So it was a little dicey, even for me to kind of get to school. So I was kind of worried about the kids. But we all got there like within 5 minutes of the attendance time. Everything was okay, and we were okay.
Well, that's a win.
That was a win. But then the kids tried to load the bus, and there were like 2 wipeouts, which is like not good.
Could you just stay on your feet?
Once we got on the road, things were fine. And the kids had a really nice time. It was pretty different to perform at 9:30 a.m. Though, I will say. That's like we come in, we've got like we're playing jazz, and it's like the jazz music we're playing right now is like upbeat, loud, and intense. And doing that on a Saturday morning on like a 20-degree day, like you gotta believe. So that was like a totally different thing. But the process and like the journey and the adventure, that was something I'm trying to keep track of too.
Were you nervous at 7:20 a.m.?
Absolutely. especially because the roads were not good.
So you got to school whenever ahead of time, and you
Yeah.
were the first one there.
yeah,
And then were you like, okay, here we go?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's how it feels, right? You're kind of rolling the dice.
I totally we left on a Friday morning. We did not have school because it was a President's holiday 4-day weekend, and there were some students that were gone the day before that were ill, and that I had not made contact with. And I was like, well, I hope this goes okay, and I hope that for their sake, they're feeling better and that they're with us.
Yes.
But and they were.
Yes.
But I think that's the tense
That
part.
is tense, especially because I would say the last 2 weeks there's been something going around
Right.
at our school, and I think I had 4 or 5 kids out, and one had even texted me the night before and said, "Hey, I am not feeling good. Like, just letting you know. I'll text you again in the morning, but here's what's going on."
You're like, no.
I know. And that's like a lonely feeling
It is.
for that child, but also the teacher,
Right.
like to kind of figure out what's going on. So once all of the students were in seats in the band room that morning for attendance, I was like, okay, we're good. We can go. We're good. So I did a similar thing as you, and just kind of like did the checklist, talk through the day and stuff. And I failed to say this, but you've said this before, that the performance is of equal to, if not more or less important than the meal that you will all share at the mall later in the day.
Right.
The warm-up is a similar importance to walking to the warm-up and
Yes.
talking with your buds. Like,
Yes.
it's all
Same
encompassing
thing. Yeah.
as part of the experience. And we did, and you're right, like there are some spontaneous moments in your time that you can't plan out. Like, you can't say, we're going to make a funny at 1:40 p.m. today. Like, it doesn't happen like that.
No.
But, we had our moments. Like, we walk into the warm-up room, and one of the instruments that we were using was like so horrendously out of tune. We had to take a minute and shut things down just to tune it up. And the kids were like, what?
Because it was cold?
Or unused for a while. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But once that was like a funny moment that like
Okay.
we had to like shut it down. And that's like something they'll remember, And I can think back to other moments on that day. And I'm sure you can think of your own moments that were like authentic, but
Yeah.
you're building the culture. I can think of one too, like 2 years ago or maybe last year when I traveled on this trip with you. I think for the last 2 years, you've done a photo, like a slow-mo photo when the kids jump in the air. Right?
Yeah.
And I did that with Jazz 3 and
Okay.
recreated that at the Concord Mall, right by the Barnes, or not the Concord Mall. Excuse me. University Park Mall in Mishawaka.
The Concord Mall is. Yeah.
That would-
Sorry. The kids are like, what? There's a
Wait,
mall?
There's a mall? So we recreated that, and just like, silly thing to do, but I want to make that a part of the tradition of any time we do a trip, but
Yeah.
stuff like that.
That's funny because you were talking about instruments that didn't work. We got up. Now, we were up in Madison, and it wasn't very snowy, but it was single-digit cold. So the instruments that were brass stayed under the bus all night.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So we came into our high school and we got into our homeroom area, and there was not a lot of time between arrival and it's time to go. So the kids got out there. Now the woodwinds were in better shape because some of them took them inside, and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
clarinet players took them inside so they didn't like crack. But the trumpet, the trumpet,
Mr. Peterson, my lips are stuck to my horn.
and I said, "Come on, guy." I wasn't like angry. I was like, "Come on, guys, you guys got to move a little quicker, and you got to put your warm air through the horn and put your valves down." And first of all, they go, "I can't move the valves. The valves are frozen." Right? They said the valves are frozen, and I was like, "Let me see that." And I was like, "Yep, frozen." and I said, "Well, at least you can blow on it." You go, "No, my lips are sticking to the mouthpiece." And I was like, "Okay," and so they were like cradling it, and they're like rocking
lonely
it.
feeling.
So and so by the time 10 minutes of like really working on the instruments, they got up to temperature. Then we got to warm up, and they were fine.
Every brass player that was listening just now had just like a flashback moment to a cold marching band rehearsal
it
where
stinks.
the condensation happens so quickly because the weather, and the spit drips back down out of your mouthpiece down your chin.
And then it freezes.
And then it
Yeah,
freezes,
It's
and then
gross.
it's good times. That's why band do it. Okay. No, but there's tons of like silly little stuff that happens over the weekends that you can't even think about because they just like happen so often.
Right.
Like when we let the kids loose in the mall for like 2 hours. Hour to eat, hour to go spend your parents' money,
Yep,
perfect
yep.
time. And like the kids come back with like Build-A-Bears and like bucket hats that are matching. And we're like, okay, this
Exactly. Right.
this is a
They're
good
having
time.
a great time.
They did. So that's kind of the stuff that is the free time. But then if you think of like what you could call like your educational constructive time, right? Like you and I both had times where we were in performances, where
Yep.
we were listening to other groups perform
Mhm.
and attending clinics with, jazz masters that are
Mhm.
trying to spread the wealth to the younger kids. So, trying to have those moments in there too with the kids. Like maybe what does some of that stuff look like for you guys?
Well, the one band when we were in Wisconsin performed early, like 9 a.m. Again, kind of hilarious because it was 9, and we opened it with a really loud shouting blues tune. Okay.
You said they were kind of unhinged and like a
They
good way.
were like going for it. They
Yeah.
were like not possessed, but I mean they were like, they were like lots.
not possessed,
Not-
but
But they were like really happy, and they were really engaged with the audience, which was hardly anybody.
and hard to do at 9 a.m. but good
Right,
for
and
them.
it was this
Yeah,
big,
yeah.
beautiful auditorium with a few adult judges, and the other band from Concord was there, jazz too, and then maybe about 30 other people.
Mhm.
But so yeah, when you go through that, you go through your tunes, and then traditionally, like in that kind of situation, a couple people come up and they address your band
Mhm.
and they talk to you,
Mhm.
and it's kind of it's an interesting situation because it's kind of like it's an interesting situation because, and I've talked to the students about this, and you probably said something too, but when you perform, especially in a group like jazz band, where your endorphins get going, right? And so,
Yes, they do.
and when you get going at the end of it, you're kind of like, yeah, you're like feeling it. It's like your runner's high, right? Like you're feeling good about it,
You are.
right? And then I said,
I see where you're going.
I said,
Yeah.
just be aware that when someone comes up and they talk to you, be aware that you're going to be in one emotional state and they're coming up in a different, and don't let them take you off your track. Don't let them take you off balance. Okay. So, because they normally come up and say, you guys are great, but, right. And then go into like what's not happening about it, which is what they're paid to do. They're constructively work with the students. So then we went to a room, another rehearsal room. We had 3 judges work with us for 30 minutes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
That's a really
So
good
we
amount
got
of
like
time.
a 10-minute clinic on stage, and then we took 2 or 3 of those judges, and they went back and they hung out with us in the band room.
Yeah.
And so they kind of tag team approach, and it was interesting because that first clinic, I had students come back after that and said that was like a really informative clinic.
That's awesome.
It was great.
That's awesome.
And we played 3 tunes, and they only spent time on 1 tune and probably the first third of it, but they just like talked about concepts. But like, okay, here's this concept and play, like specific concepts, apply it to this part of the music, and engaging with the students, which was really, really, really good. So the on performance, takes 20 minutes. The clinic took 30 minutes, and then so each band had a chance to do that. And then afterwards, our afternoon in Wisconsin was lunch, which was on campus that the school provided. And then it provided a chance for like they went to improv classes or jazz theory classes or history classes. And then they went to like a saxophone class or like a master class on their instrument. And I think sometimes those are hit or miss.
Yeah.
We've been to enough of them that like when the jazz band that had the first clinic, like the person that was interacting with them like really hit it, and the kids were like really engaged, right?
Yes.
And and I told the students, I said, he is a professional musician, but I said also he's a really good teacher. And they're like, oh yeah, like I see that, because a lot of times sometimes you have like a really good musician that doesn't maybe have the nuance and the engagement tools to be a good teacher.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what they say because it's not being received.
Master of the content.
Not a love of teaching.
Not a love of
and
teaching.
they're being hired as jazz professionals, and that's where they cut their teeth, and that's where they make their money. So I'm not bashing them. It's just they're not in the school setting working with teenagers, adolescents, and young
the
adults.
kid part in the large group of kids. I mean, those cats are probably like awesome at teaching private lessons
Yes.
or like small 1-on-5, 1-on-10 groups. But you get some of these guys have a room full of 100 to 200 kids
It's
trying
tough.
to teach all at
It's
once.
tough.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is interesting. Like, if you and I ever started our own jazz festival someday, like what that would look like to make it really hit. You know,
Be a lot of caffeine.
I think I would hire people like Jack and some of our other jazz teachers in the area.
Well, didn't you do
Did I?
the Elkhart Jazz Festival? Like you were a teacher for that, right?
Yeah, I got to do
and
that.
some
Yeah.
of those guys did
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we did that. We
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
came
yeah.
together and taught that. So it was teachers teaching the kids in the community, not
Yeah.
our own school, but different schools, and that was fun. So backing up, the overall idea of going to a class is like really worthy, and really going to a class and listen to somebody talk or listen to somebody play. And then every once in a while, it just hits right, where it's like, gosh, that person was hitting it. They were awesome on their instrument, and they were like a dynamic teacher. Bullseye. And then sometimes you're like, not so much.
It's true. And so we had like a kind of similar opportunity of experiences too. We had our performance 9:30 a.m. and then we had, I think, 3 clinicians come up on stage, and they were kind of talking, and maybe one would teach a full group, but then like maybe one of the clinicians who was like a piano player would sit next to your piano player and talk to him, and then one of them might come up to me and like point at the score and tell me some comments he just had just for me. So all that kind of stuff is helpful. And then we did not have the luxury of like a half hour afterward, which would have been really cool, but that's just not how they ran it at Bethel. So we did that, and then similar to Steve, at the end of the day, and we went away for lunch, and then we came back, and in the afternoon, we had master classes where they could go, trumpets in this room, saxes here, rhythm section here, about an hour doing that. And then there was like an hour full-on Q&A session. In the midst of all that, it was really encouraged / expected that each band, when they're not performing and when they're not at a clinic, watch the other bands.
Yep.
And this was kind of cool for us too, because we went to a local festival, so we got to see all of these local bands that we normally wouldn't have a chance to see. So it was really good for the kids to kind of see what's going on with these other bands, and like have a chance for them to kind of love on some other kids and say like, oh, that was really cool. And a lot of my kids were talking about other stuff that they heard that they really liked. And they're like, Mr. Hinkle, can we play this tune?
Yeah.
Like, can we do that? So that was cool to see them be excited. And then on the other side of that, this was a high school festival, and for dinner, it was just kind of like a free-for-all pizza thing. Like, I think the chair running it called Papa John's and said, 75 large cheese, please. And then they just set them all out and just like let the kids go. So the kids got to eat and then meet other kids from other schools. So some of my kids were talking about that they had an opportunity to like talk to some other kids from other schools. And that was like a cool experience through the, vehicle of jazz that they had, like a reason to talk to people. And then for us, we had a final evening performance where they let the top 4 bands, high school bands, play along with Bethel University's jazz band, and then the clinicians sat in.
Oh, cool.
So I think the kids and I agreed that the best experience of that day was having a clinician play with us on stage.
Sure.
And that was like super fun, because we never had a chance to rehearse this, by the way. I mean, I was going to talk about the spontaneity and kind of improvisation of a field trip itself, but kind of figuring this out was like its own process. I brought the kids into our homeroom, and we had like 10 minutes to figure this out. And we huddled up like we were a basketball team, and I'm like pointing at the whiteboard. I'm like, okay, so here's what's going on. Okay, you play twice here, no repeat. And we didn't have a chance to rehearse it, and the kids were like, okay, got it. Yeah, okay. And then we put it out on stage, and it worked, and it was like fine and fun. And that's like kind of part of the cool experience, is that was just like totally like thrown together. And I know you've had performances like that. But that was really cool. So one other thing I wanted to talk about is like the kind of the kid side and the management side of a field trip, quote field trip. Steve, you and I are lucky because we have good kids.
Best kids.
We have the best kids. And as far as we know, like that was like a very seamless trip for both of us.
Right.
It was like super easy.
Right.
We've probably both had trips in the past where we see some things that we go,
Yep.
how are we going to deal with this? And I think, this is a teaching podcast, and talking about like classroom management is like one thing when it's in the classroom and you can manage it. But when it's on a trip, that's kind of different. And I'm not saying kids like totally doing something they like shouldn't at all, but you might see some kids like maybe breaking off.
Yep.
Yep. What do you do?
Because
You're trying to morph that culture.
Okay, well, here's an example of that. When we were up getting ready to perform, I walked out on stage with one of the bands, right? And they're all out there. And so there's like the other band is in the audience. And then, like I said, there's like 30 more people. And I looked at the band, one of my bands, it's like sitting in the audience, and they're all like sitting like in like groups of 5, groups of 6. And I go out there, I go, would you guys please sit together? I'm like on the stage. And I'm like, no, look, Concord, you guys sit together. So I'm like, yeah, not babysitting, but like, okay, I'm supposed to be working with these guys here on stage, but would you guys like sit together? Like, I did not like that look.
Yeah.
I didn't, because I don't like the idea of like splinters in the group. I want them all together. I want you guys packed in. So, and then the next time that we went through that, fine. It worked like that fine. And so yeah, there've been some times that like on the Monday after travel, I think when you were in high school, I can remember having some pretty serious talks.
When I was in high school? Was it my fault? Was it me?
No,
was it
I
me?
don't think it was you. Well, I don't know. But I can remember some not great stuff that happened
Sure.
that I had to address, whether it had been like bus behavior or something, and not like huge stuff, but stuff that
Stuff
you had
that
to
you're like, come on,
guys,
guys,
and you have
come
to
on.
revisit it and make sure that we know we're not going to do this.
Because there is a lot of like freedom.
A lot of freedom.
And if you're sending the kids off to do some stuff in Chicago or send off kids to a mall, you can't have your eyes on them the whole time. Now, we have parent chaperones that come with us, but one of the best things about these field trips is that it lets kids be.
Yep.
Like, that's a skill that you can learn, and that's a safe environment to learn how to function like on your own. And we're coaching the kids on what to do and how to do that and make these good choices. And our kids do a really good job of that. But I think that's like part of the learning curve, is like letting them be and do those things.
Right. And then also I think with that is that there is a certain flow to the group, in that it's understood that there's going to be some things that don't go well.
Yes.
There are going to be students that arrive at the wrong time when you're doing the next meeting time.
Yes.
Right. And I mean, I can remember like last year in Chicago, the last person to the bus last year was my own son. So, and I got off the bus.
Yeah, you're
like,
like, hey, buddy.
Hey, walking back. But just, things like that
They're going to happen.
they are going to happen.
It's not maybe that. No, they will happen.
Kids showing up at the wrong time, or not being dressed correctly, or they forgot something, or they said something inappropriate, like shocking that a group of that would happen. And not to downplay that, I don't want it to happen, but it happens.
It happens.
I mean, all you have to do is go walk through the school on any given day, and you can feast on that stuff. So, but you're always trying to not let that. I'm trying to, I think you are too, not letting that derail the esprit de corps of the group, and pull those people aside, or use that as a teaching experience for everybody. Say, hey, if I say 5 o'clock on the bus, what time should you be on the bus? Like 4:59. Okay, let's, just kind of take a little bit more pride in some of those things, right?
And being proactive.
Yep.
And as you said, like not letting it derail you, but also like, you as the teacher, and like you have a choice. Like, okay, I'm thinking about this with concert band. I'm going band centric again. Shocking. We're working on a scale today in Sinfonietta, and you and I know that in this scale, if they're going to miss a note,
third note, seventh note,
every time, every time. And I'm like, okay, I'm smarter than this. How am I going to get them to play the seventh note right
So what'd you do?
the first time? I picked a hot shot, and I was like, okay. And dude, I was like the scaffold master today.
Okay, good.
Dude, call me Bob the Builder.
Bob, call him Bob the
Call
Builder.
me Bob the Builder, dude, because we
Okay.
scaffolded.
Okay.
Like, great.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, play the first note of the scale. They won't mess up that one because they'll play it right,
Right,
every
right.
time. Boop. Okay. On your own, play the first three. Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I need a test pilot, and I was like, okay, who's in? And I'm like, okay, you got it. Go. Okay, 3 notes. Go. Okay, everybody, check the third note. Check. We haven't even played yet. Check the third note. Play that. And again, the goal's the 7th note. I'm just getting
Oh
on
my
the
gosh,
3rd.
Wait, you got to the 7th note?
Dude,
Oh my
Bob
gosh.
the Builder. You should start calling me Robert. That's my formal name. Okay.
Robert.
Then I had the same kid. Okay, can you play 5, 6, and 7? And then he played 5, 6, 7. I'm like, okay, we're checking the wrong note. Okay. Hey, finger along, slide along. Come on.
Yeah.
7th note. And then we got it. And then it was like pretty right the first time. And then Steve, Robert W. Builder. I don't know what the W stands for. Then
Will.
we played
Robert Will Builder.
Robert William. Oh, Robert will build that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Boom, Robert
Dang.
Will. Okay.
Cooking. And then when we played the exercise that was fortunately in the same key signature, they didn't miss that note when it showed up. And I
Okay.
didn't even talk about that, dude.
They got it.
Robert
W.
will builder. Wait, Robert will build. No, Bits Builder.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a good moment. Anyway, that stuff's going to happen. And Steve and I are pretty intentional when we make our itineraries for these trips. Back to the trip thing now. That we take our time and we get out like Google Maps, right? And you're like
Get out
plugging
the
in
map, get out
your
the map.
every destination. You like put in the travel time, and then you're like backing it up. Okay, if we're performing at 9:30, we're going to be at warm up at 9, so we should be our instruments out
Yeah,
ready to go at
let's hit the mic,
8:50, and then we have to be in the building at 8:20, so we have to park the bus at 8:10.
Yeah.
Right? So we're walking it back that whole time. Now, that's the plan.
Right.
And sometimes it doesn't always go to plan, but we're building in that time for it to happen. And you know that as a teacher on these trips or a facilitator of these trips, you're going to have to improvise. And last year, I took my first trip by myself as a
Yeah, you
director. Like
did,
I was the
yeah.
only staff person, and I had parent volunteers, and I had my band with me. And I was kind of freaking out because
Yeah.
I was like, oh, man. This year, I did not freak out
That's good.
because I felt like I could improvise
Right.
if something went wrong. And I feel like that, giving myself that ability that I'm like, no, I know how to handle this. If something goes, like, I can figure this out. I'm fine. That made me feel like a lot better, and it made me feel more calm, and probably reflected that with the kids feeling calm
Yeah,
on the
most
trip.
importantly, that it reflected that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think there is a flow to traveling, that there is a, grace period, you things go. Now, I would be saying this with jazz band travel compared to like traveling with a marching band.
Ooh, yeah. True.
Okay, so,
True.
I'll say to the parents, like, okay, this is a totally different experience traveling with a jazz band. We have one bus, we have 40 kids. When we do hotel rooms, there's 15 rooms, 10 of them are students, right?
Yep.
And so, and we have 6 adults looking after 40 kids, and we're good, right? We don't have any excess. We don't have extra trailers. We don't have, vans or anything like that. So we're able to be a little bit more fluid and negotiate the schedule to fit our needs. But then, like, roll it ahead, I'll be getting into this,
Yes, you will.
picking up where Scott Spradling left off in designing a trip for a day, 2 hours down the road or 4 hours down the road, or an overnight down to Indianapolis, and with 40 rooms or 50 rooms.
Yeah, with 300 kids.
Right. And
yeah.
then so when you adjust a schedule and you have 7 buses and 4 trailers and 2 trucks, it doesn't go as well when you say, okay, we're not going to stop at this rest stop. We're going to go 2 more down, because you don't know about parking. Right. You don't know
Yes.
about parking. You don't know about the turnaround. You don't know if all those restaurants can house that many people. When you go with 40 kids or 20 kids, one jazz band, you can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Right? And you can turn the bus around.
That's true. Those trips with the marching band feel like a machine.
Right. So that has to be more accurate.
Yes.
Right? More targeted.
And the students have to know that
Right.
they got to be
And
like,
there's not
there.
freedom in those.
No.
That's a totally different kind of thing. And,
No.
and so there needs to be communication between the director, the head band dad, the head band mom, and the head bus driver.
Yep.
And, keeping the directors in the loop, but saying, okay, it's raining. Here's plan A.
Yes.
Here's plan B. And, now
And
we're
those have
back.
been communicated like ahead of time.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's really good experience taking the smaller groups, because there is a little flexibility and a creativity and a sense of kind of fun. Like, we got to Millennium Park. We were going to all see the bean,
Yes.
and the bean was being cleaned. So it was like fenced off.
And you would say
Classic. And so we took a picture outside of the fence, and we took our little selfie out there instead of I usually take section pictures by the bean, and upside down in the bean.
Oh,
and all
yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
stuff,
You do,
right?
don't you? Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And but we couldn't do it, and then we went to the zoo, and the zoo was open, and I checked it on Google that morning and said open till 5. We're in there having a great time watching the apes, just crawl around the area in the enclosure, and they're like, we'll be closing at 4:30 today. And I was like, classic. And I was like, okay, kid. And they closed all the buildings at 4:30, and we were supposed to be there till 5. So we had to go look at seals outside and zebras and right?
Yeah.
But you just kind of make it work.
You do.
And it's okay. It's okay. And again, with the main idea being together to build community, it's fine.
And those kids are thinking about it like they thought about that on Sunday and on Monday when they had their day off. They're like, wow, that was fun. And then they come back, and then the vibe when you come back to school after that is kind of different.
It is
It's more like I don't want to say chill, because it's not chill, but it's like
comfortable.
Yeah, because you built that culture. And and it's totally different. Like I was thinking about this today, like if I like just the vibe of Jazz 3 on day
Sorry.
the vibe of Jazz 3 on day 1 versus the vibe of Jazz 3 like yesterday when we just hung out. Like it was totally different. Like cuz those kids, Jazz 3, that's like the first time they're in jazz band, right? I mean, your Jazz 1 has been, they know each other, but like they were, on day 1 like not really comfortable with each other, shocking, but like now it's just like we're a jazz band.
Right.
And it's like totally different, and that feels good to be a part of that.
Right.
And see them every day.
That's cool. I do have another story.
Story time with
Okay.
Steve Peterson.
This goes back a long time. I was in college, and it was when I was a freshman at DePaul University. I wanted to get in the top concert band because they were taking an Eastern European tour. Okay. And so the wind ensemble at DePaul, we got to go to the Soviet Union in 1988.
Wow.
Okay. Did you know this? Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Soviet Union. So we got to go to Russia and Estonia. So this is
I've heard about Russia.
Yeah, you've heard about Russia. It's true. It is cold there. Okay.
It's true. It's
Okay,
true.
We went to Russia, but then we also went to Poland. Okay. So this was when East-West, the Cold War was still intact, fully engaged.
I was not alive then, just
No, you
for the
weren't.
record.
Okay. But in this it was a little apprehensive. I was a little apprehensive going because it was like the Soviet Union, and they told us that the travel ambassadors told us, and our directors told us, if you decide to do something stupid in the Soviet Union and you get apprehended by the Soviet, police or law enforcement, there's nothing we can do.
So why that's so funny, but that's kind of terrifying.
I know.
Like if you get arrested,
and
you're on your own.
there were some wild
Sorry.
hair, so we had a 50-person wind ensemble, whatever, and there were some wild hairs in the group. I mean, it was a bunch of college kids.
50 college kids in the Soviet Union.
Right.
What could go
and
wrong?
Some hilarious kids. Like I spent my 19th birthday on a train traveling across Poland. It was hilarious. It was an overnight thing, but I mean, it's just so many wonderful experiences. Just like I look back at it now, like being in the Eastern Bloc and being in the Soviet Union in the late 80s, it was just like magical. And we got to do so many cool things, and we got to play for like military entourages. We got to play for dignitaries. We played a lot of Americana music like Gershwin and Copland and Sousa, and we did a lot of exchange concerts with other conservatories. I mean, it was like amazing. But there was this guy on our trip that was my roommate. And if there was the guy that was going to get apprehended by the Soviet police, it would have been this guy. His name was Rob. Rob wore a long, dark trench coat before that was cool. Now it's cool, right? But he wore that, and his shoes were always untied, okay? And his backpack was just full of papers, right? And his hair was always just like somebody had used him as an eraser, right? It was just like, he was always like that, right? And he always kind of had like a star-crossed look on his eye, like, what's going to, straight A's.
Rob. Okay.
Rob.
Straight A's.
Brilliant.
Fascinating.
Wonderful saxophone player, but highly disorganized and just not real prompt, right? So they're like, when you go through customs, hang on to your passport. We're like, I got it. So you get off the plane. The first time when we land in Moscow, when you deplane and you get off, you got to go through the turnstile with a classic-looking Russian soldier looking straight at you behind glass, going, looking very serious at your portrait, and kind of like the stereotypical Eastern European kind of thing. Like, it's like, this is not my home. This does not feel like O'Hare Airport in Chicago. So they're like, you may go, that kind of thing, right? So then we get to get out of the airport. You had to go through, again, I don't know why, but you had to do 2 proofs of who you were within like 50 yards of each other. So I was at the front of the group, and I get up there, and I could see the glass, and it was like outside, and our charter coach was out there. So we get up there, I got my saxophone and my bags, and I'm like, here's my passport. And he's like, this is you. I was like, this is me. This is you. And he's like, you go ahead. And so I get all my stuff, right? So about 3 people behind me is Rob, right? Trench coat open, shoes untied, hair all squirrely. He's like, just, right? So here's Rob. He gets up to the final destination before we get to go to Moscow. And I turn around, here's Rob. He's like looking in his bags. He's like looking in all his pockets, patting himself down. He cannot find his passport. I'm like, are you kidding me? So Rob is like, scared to death. And I'm like, dude, what's going on? He goes, I can't find my passport. I was like, you just had it 20 yards ago. So anyway, the director was there. The director of the wind ensemble was there. Some other staff people from Concord. And we're like going through Rob's stuff. And we're all going through his pockets. Like, I went through the pockets of his trench coat. And we're going through everything. And Rob is like freaking out. He's like, dude, I don't know where it is, man. I still don't know where it is. And then this time the Soviet officials get involved. And they're like, where was your passport? Kind of thing. And Rob's like, I don't know. They had to take Rob away.
And you're like watching, Rob.
And he was my roommate. And I was like, cool, I got a room to myself.
Single.
So we get on the bus, and Rob stays back. And we're like, oh, my gosh.
Guys, they took Rob.
God, they took Rob. I know we're almost out of time, but you got to get to the end of this. This kind of gets a little conspiracy theory-like. But
Wait, have you seen Rob since then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were about to be like, Rob's still there.
No, but it does have a fascinating ending. Stay with me on the story. So we get on the charter bus. The crew that had their passport that could figure out what was going on, we got it. And we went to like this church or like a cathedral, and it was going to be a concert area that we could rehearse in.
Okay.
So we set up all our instruments, and we put our items backstage, our coats and cases. And then we had our stuff like on the stage, and then they took us to lunch, okay? And so Rob was not with us. We did our little thing. We set up our instruments. They said, go get lunch. So we go eat lunch. Rob comes in. Rob comes in. We're Rob. What's going on, man? You find it? He goes, no, man. He's like still like freaking out. He's like, no, I can't find my stuff. And they said if I can't find it, I can't go on the tour, and I'm going to be like in custody. Like something like really bad. And we're like, Rob. And he's like freaking out, like understandably so, because I was just enjoying my rye bread and my bottled water. I was like, this is a blast. I'm in Moscow. And so we go back to that area, and Rob is able to go on the rehearsal with us, right? And so after the rehearsal, we go into this backstage area where all our coats and cases were. Rob puts his hand in his trench coat, and his passport's there.
What was the reaction from Rob?
He like started crying. He was like, "Ah!" I mean, he was like totally freaking out, and we all were. He was like beside himself. He's like, "Oh my gosh, what is going?" I don't know. We don't know why. I'm like, I went through the coat with him, and I saw the passport arrive in that coat. I saw that when he came back, and I have no idea where it came from. We told the tour guide, who was Russian, we said, Rob said he figured it out. He found it, and she was like, this is good, but she was like, okay, and not too like emotional about it.
Okay.
But it was fascinating. Like, it was just the idea, the setting of this like group of 20-something kids that were in Moscow behind the Iron Curtain at the height of the Cold War, and Rob, who was like the biggest like messy kid, but like really smart, and he's the one and they didn't have it, and then all of a sudden at the end of the rehearsal it was there. So we didn't know if somebody like planted it, somebody had their eye on them, and they pickpocketed them. I don't know. It was really bizarre. So in hindsight, if you're traveling with a group to
if you're going to Russia,
if you're going
with
to
a school
Russia,
trip,
I don't know. I haven't traveled internationally with students, so that's a whole different thing. But that was a case in like, you gotta make sure the kids are safe, and you gotta make sure that has nothing to do with being a band director. That was just like a odd thing. I just thought it was interesting for the real or the.
Wow, poor Rob.
Yeah.
See, all I could think of was the time we handed out tickets on the bus
in Chicago,
and the kids got off the bus, and one kid was like,
"We were going to Blue Man Group."
Tickets handed out on the bus. Student walks off the bus. Bus drives away. Student pat down self. Student, Mr. Peterson, I left my ticket on the bus. And that's when the directors decided to hand out the tickets, essentially to the ticket taker. We're like, it's for these guys, just 200. Yeah, just don't trust them.
In like 20 seconds, this kid.
That's true. It is like 20 seconds. You got your ticket? Yep. Oh, I left it on the bus.
I left it on the bus, and the bus is like down there. Oh, wah, wah.
Okay, well, have fun peeking through the window for Blue Man Group today. Jeez.
But it is fun traveling with kids. We highly recommend it. It's a good way to build your team. It's a good way to build life skills and being flexible. It's a good way to build pride, and it's a good way to see things.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Okay. So we're at that time.
We're at that time. Go follow us on TikTok. Keep giving us ratings and reviews. And anything else you got?
No, sorry it went so long. It's usually 45 minutes, and now we're at 55. Sorry about that.
Yeah, well, we had to figure out what happened with Rob.
Okay, so thank you for listening. For Steve Peterson.
And Jack Hinkle.
We're out of here.
I don't know why
Bye.
I did that. See ya.
Bye.